I went months without being able to find a single Superstars figure in store. And then, in that typical WWE Mattel fashion, I just walked into a store and found 2 whole waves of them. This isn't even all the ones I got. These are just the ones I was able to fit onto the review stand. So, indulge me. For the next couple of wrestling nights, we're just going to be taking out all these guys. Look, I know it would be more thematic to do Macho and Hogan, but these are the 2 I'm most excited about. They're the first 2 we're opening. I'm sorry, and besides, Mr. Perfect, Macho Man, they kind of fit similar headspaces for me. Wonderful Intercontinental Championship owners, wonderful workers, underrated, some of the best people of their generation. Absolutely, these 2 can stick together. For anyone unaware of what the WWE Superstars line is, they are inspired by Remco figures. The Remco NWA figures, or rather the Remco AWA figures, were knockoffs of He-Man, so Mattel is using the Masters of the Universe Origins bodies to make wrestlers. For the most part, they're really fun figures. Very divisive, but that's mostly just because of how hard it is to find. Especially when you got things like on the back, you have like Mr. Perfect, and then some great fonts, great t-shirt designs, quotes. Macho Man, same way. As you can see, Macho Man, he is from wave... I'm pretty sure he's wave 3 and Mr. Perfect's wave 4. I straight up don't remember wave numbers anymore because, once again, it is almost impossible to find these guys for some reason. So let's just enjoy what we have, okay? Focusing on Macho first, they are going for the more kind of WrestleMania 3, WrestleMania 4 era, like Poncho Macho, as opposed to like his later cowboy outfits. I prefer his later day, like WrestleMania 7 cowboy outfits, but I also understand that for the era they're kind of focusing on for this toy line, this makes more sense. The thing about this cloak is you can see these red strings here. I don't know what they're supposed to be. You can't tie the robe together. All I can figure is like maybe they're supposed to be trim, because that's where they are up here on this collar, but then they are not attached to the robe here. Not too sure. Either way, I do like the cloak. I think it's made of a very cool material. It's very similar to the material of Ultimate Warrior's duster a few waves back. Taking it off though, you can see Macho Man right on his ass. His purple and yellow trunks, probably one of his more iconic outfits, right up there with his pink and yellow. And then of course, you do have this headband that's removable. The glasses are not, very similar to the Hasbro Macho. I actually prefer that, because 1, why would you have a Macho Man figure on display without his glasses? But 2, that's kind of what was the modus operandi at the time. Most Machos didn't have removable glasses, so I think that's fine for the aesthetic that they're going for. We also have some great hand options for Macho. Alongside his 2 pointer hands, he does have 2 closed fists, which is what he comes out of the box with, as well as 2 splayed open hands, so kind of more wrestling hands, I guess. Overall, Macho is one of the better figures from this line, I think. He's very basic compared to some of the others, but they hit all the points they need to very well. Unfortunately, there's also the figure that has the most QC issues. The headband is very poorly painted, and assuming that this cloak actually isn't how it's supposed to be, it's more egregious than most of the QC issues have been for me with this line so far. Even still, it's Macho. What are you gonna do? Not like Macho? Impossible. Now, the Superstars line, when it first came out, wasn't actually something I was all that excited for. It was only after buying the NWO Hogan, and more specifically the Honky Tonk Man, that I really started to get into it. That said, out of all the figures they've ever announced, the 3 that I was the most excited for just upon the announcement were Earthquake, Rick Rude, and top of the list is Mr. Perfect. Mr. Perfect is one of my all-time favorite wrestlers, a wrestler I only love more and more as I get older. And this is green singlet Mr. Perfect. I've never had a figure of him in his green singlet. I was so excited to get this figure. Made even more special because at the end of the day, they just don't make that many Mr. Perfect figures. So there's a reason why he's getting an opening right now. Getting Mr. Perfect out of the box, my first thoughts are he is incredible. The head sculpt, even though it's cartoony, still has an undeniable Kurt Hennig energy. I love his smirk, just how exaggerated it is, and yet when you go back and watch his wrestling matches, it's not that exaggerated. The guy had an excellent smirk. You can see he does have the Intercontinental Championship belt. We have gotten this belt before with Shawn Michaels, but it's still pretty cool. Most of these figures don't come with belts, so that's always nice to get. It's also a good time to go through the articulation, something I neglected to do with Macho. You do have a ball joint here in the head. You have a universal here at the shoulder. You have a universal at the elbow, universal at the wrist, a universal at the hip, a single knee, a thigh cut right here, and then you do have a universal, or rather a rocker at the ankle, as well as up and down. These figures are modular, which means they all have the same exact articulation. Now, Macho's head might move a little bit better just due to difference in hair, but that is it. Now, here's something I really want to know, and I've not actually checked this yet. I want to know what's underneath his singlet, because a part of me was almost expecting them to have painted on his blue singlet underneath, you know, do a more popular singlet as like a 2-in-1. Oh my god, this is even better. Okay, so you take the singlet off. Those are his AWA trunks. Those are his black trunks from when he was the AWA champion. So this is a 2-in-1. Oh, dude, we have gotten a black singlet, Mr. Perfect, right? We've never gotten, to my knowledge, aside from in the actual Remco line, because Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig did have an AWA figure, if I'm not mistaken. We've never had proper AWA trunked Mr. Perfect. And for anyone curious, by the way, for everyone who ever said Mr. Perfect is the greatest wrestler to never be a world champion, he was a world champion. He was the AWA world champion. And I know that's not quite as popular as a WWE champion, but you could definitely make the argument that it is far more prestigious. The singlet is kind of weird, just on the proportions of the figure, right? At the same time, I do like that it's a cloth singlet. It's like every time I can find something to complain about this Mr. Perfect, there's like a decent reason for it. I'm sorry, I know I'm a sycophant, but I'll own up to it. Perfect might have more accessories than any of the other Superstars figures I've looked at, because he has the cloth singlet, the belt, he has 2 open hands, he has 2 closed fists, he has 2 open hands. I was going to use them as thumbs up, but it's you know, item holding hands. And then he has his towel. So for anyone who doesn't know, Mr. Perfect used to walk down and he'd have this towel just in his hand and he'd be like drying himself off from sweat, and then he would throw it over his back shoulder and it would always land on the other wrestler. And there were other times where like he would throw it like ahead of him and then catch it with his backhand. This is such a good accessory. We've gotten the towel before in Jakks and Mattel figures, but once again, kind of like the green singlet, this is the first time I have a figure that actually has the towel. So you look at that, right? That's 2 cloth goods, the belt, multiple hands. That's easily more than what Macho got at the very least. The only figure that I can look at in this collection I have that we're going to go over in these next couple of videos, like Hogan has more stuff. So I'm amazed that they put so much budget into Mr. Perfect, because I love him. Most people do. But he's not the game changer. He's not the moneymaker that Hogan is. Or at least that's not what I think, but maybe because Mr. Perfect just doesn't get that many figures, they're expecting him to be a little bit more of a catch. So, hell, I'll always go for more stuff for Mr. Perfect. Why not? Maybe it's just the rush of having these guys brand new, but they honestly might be my new favorite Superstars figures. The Mr. Perfect particular is just spectacular. A thing I will say is, looking back on it, I'm really glad I chose to do Macho and Mr. Perfect together. I'm not going to put the music here, but look up Macho Man Randy Savage, My Perfect Friend. For anyone who doesn't know, in the 2000s, Randy Savage put out a rap album. For the most part, it's pretty bad. Worth a listen if you just want to laugh a bit, especially his diss track against Hogan. But he actually has a really sweet song in there just talking about how much he adored Kurt Hennig as a human being and how much he misses him. So, with all that said, these two are more than worth it. I'm so happy to have found them. I wish they were more available. I wish the Superstars had better and more consistent supplies. But if you're able to find them, I would say that they are worth a pickup. Not a lot of Superstars figures do I think match up to just how much bang for your buck and how much just general love you can feel within the figures for these wrestlers. That's all I have to say on these, I guess. Fuck it, I'll say it. He's perfect. And well, he's too sweet to be sour.